There is a silent war being waged not with weapons of steel and fire, but with whispers in the dark, with unseen hands plucking at the threads of your awareness, harvesting the very essence of what makes you you. You may feel it in the quiet moments, in the hollow spaces between thoughts, a gnawing sense that something vital is being siphoned away, that you are more than what this world has told you, yet somehow less than what you were meant to become. This is not mere metaphor, this is an ancient truth, veiled in myth, whispered in the hidden teachings of mystery schools, encoded in the symbols of forgotten civilizations. The harvest of the soul is not some distant dystopian fantasy, it is happening now, in the architecture of our reality, in the systems that feed on distraction, in the energies that thrive on fragmentation. But to name it is to begin reclaiming it. To see the harvest is to step out of its grasp. Imagine for a moment that you are not just a body, not just a mind, but a field of luminous energy and infinite potentiality wrapped in flesh. Now imagine that this field is being farmed, its light diverted, its power diluted, its voice muted. Who or what would benefit from such a theft? And more importantly, how do you take it back? We are standing at the crossroads of an eternal struggle, the battle between remembrance and forgetfulness, between sovereignty and surrender. This is not about fear, it is about awakening. It is about recognizing that you are not a passive witness to your own existence, but a conscious participant in a grand, unfolding mystery. If these words stir something within you, if they resonate like an echo from a dream you can't quite recall, then you are already stepping out of the harvest and into the harvest's end. The path to liberation begins with seeing, and from there, the reclamation of your soul is not only possible, it is inevitable. If this message speaks to you, if you feel the call to go deeper, then let me know in the comments below. And if you wish to journey further into the hidden architecture of reality, consider subscribing, for what lies ahead is only the beginning. To understand the harvest of the soul, we must first pull back the veil on the nature of reality itself, not as it appears, but as it operates. There are forces at play here, ancient and unseen, that thrive on the fragmentation of human consciousness. These forces are not demons in the classical sense, nor are they mere metaphors. They are systems, energies, and intelligences that feed on the most precious resource in existence, awareness itself. Consider this. Every time you lose yourself in mindless scrolling, every time you numb your intuition with distraction, every time you trade your sovereignty for the comfort of consensus reality, you are offering up a piece of your soul's energy not to some shadowy overlord, but to the very structures that depend on your sleep. This is the harvest. And it is subtle, so subtle that most never notice it happening. At the core of this phenomenon lies the principle of loosh, a term borrowed from esoteric traditions, describing the energy generated by sentient beings through emotion, struggle, and suffering. It is the fuel of unseen hierarchies, the currency of a hidden economy. When you are trapped in cycles of fear, anxiety, or unfulfilled desire, you are not just experiencing emotions, you are generating something, and that something is being used. But here is the key. The harvest only works if you remain unaware. The moment you recognize the mechanism, the moment you withdraw your consent, the entire system begins to falter. This is why secrecy has always been the weapon of those who benefit from the harvest, because knowledge is the antidote. Think of the myths of old, the stories of gods who demanded sacrifice, of trickster entities who fed on human folly, of machines that ran on human souls. These are not mere fictions. They are reflections of an underlying truth dressed in the language of symbolism. The modern world has simply repackaged these mechanisms into more palatable forms. Endless consumption, engineered division, the illusion of choice within a prison of options. Yet, there is a flaw in the system. The harvest depends on one critical vulnerability: your belief in its inevitability. The moment you realize that you are not a powerless witness, but a sovereign creator, the entire dynamic shifts. Sovereignty is not just about defiance, it is about frequency. It is about aligning with the part of you that exists beyond the reach of any system, any matrix, any harvest. So tell me now, do you feel it? The stirring of something older than time, something that knows it cannot be owned, cannot be farmed, cannot be taken. That is your birthright calling. And the path to reclaiming it begins with seeing the game for what it is. Across time and culture, the great myths whisper the same warning, a cautionary tale veiled in allegory, encrypted in symbols that bypass the rational mind to speak directly to the soul. The harvest is not a new phenomenon. It is as old as consciousness itself, and the ancients understood its mechanisms far more clearly than we do in our age of supposed enlightenment. Take, for example, the Sumerian tale of the Anunnaki, those celestial beings who descended to mine the earth's riches, only to grow weary of labor and fashion mankind as a slave species to toil in their stead. The story chills not because it is literal, but because it is archetypal. It mirrors the recurring theme of a ruling force engineering servitude through the manipulation of perception. The gods demanded worship, sacrifice, obedience not because they needed it, but because the act of giving one's energy away is the very mechanism of control. Or consider the Gnostic myth of the demiurge, the false creator who fashioned a world of illusion, a labyrinth of materialism and false divinity designed to keep souls trapped in cycles of ignorance. The Gnostics called this world a harvesting field, where the sparks of the divine, human souls, were systematically siphoned to feed something that could not create, only consume. And what was the path to liberation? Gnosis, direct knowing, the awakening that comes not from external salvation but from the unshakable realization, you are not of this system. You are merely passing through it. Even in the East, the concept of Maya, the grand illusion, speaks to this same truth. The world is a dream, but not an innocent one. It is a dream that feeds on the dreamer unless the dreamer awakens. The Hindu texts describe beings known as asuras, entities that thrive on human suffering, confusion, and forgetfulness. Their greatest trick? Convincing humanity that the harvest is simply the way things are. But perhaps the most telling symbol comes from an unexpected place: agriculture itself. The very word culture shares its root with cultivation, the tilling of soil for controlled growth. And what is a crop but something sown, nurtured, and ultimately reaped? We speak of social engineering, consumer culture, the attention economy, all sterile terms that mask the deeper truth. We are the crop. Our time, our focus, our life force, these are the commodities being farmed. Yet in every myth there is also the escape clause, the hero who outwits the gods, the sage who sees through the illusion, the initiate who learns the rules of the game and then transcends them. The symbols are not just warnings, they are maps. They show us where the traps are set, where the energy flows, and where the hidden doorways lie. The moment we move from philosophy to practice, from contemplation to embodiment, the entire dynamic shifts. It is one thing to recognize the harvest, it is another to step out of its machinery entirely. This is where the real alchemy begins, in the quiet choices of your daily life, where illusions dissolve and sovereignty takes root. Every moment you spend scrolling mindlessly, every hour lost in reactive emotion, every drop of energy given to things that do not nourish your spirit, these are not neutral acts. They are transactions in an invisible economy, one where your awareness is the most valuable commodity. The first step then is not to fight the system but to starve it by reclaiming your attention with ruthless compassion. This does not mean living in militant detachment, but rather cultivating discernment. Does this expand me or diminish me? Does this connect me to my power or scatter it to the winds? The harvest operates through resonance. It hooks into lower vibrations like fear, lack, and fragmentation. But when you anchor into states beyond its reach, unconditional love, sovereign silence, the stillness of the observer, you become invisible to its mechanisms. This is why ancient traditions emphasize practices like meditation, breathwork, and prayer, not as religious obligations, but as technologies of frequency modulation. When you cultivate inner coherence, you emit a signal that cannot be farmed. The modern world treats the body as either a machine to be optimized or a pleasure module to be indulged, both extremes that keep you trapped in the harvest. But the body, when honored as sacred, becomes the ultimate grounding rod for sovereignty. Simple acts, eating clean food, walking barefoot on the earth, fasting, dancing without self-consciousness, recalibrate your entire being to a rhythm older than manipulation. The more you inhabit your body fully, the less you can be lured into disembodied distractions. Every word you speak, every belief you repeat, is either a thread in the web of the harvest or a knife cutting through it. When you say, "I have to," instead of "I choose to," when you label yourself stressed instead of in transformation, you are casting spells, just not the kind that serve you. Begin to speak as the sovereign of your reality. Declare, "I recall my energy" when leaving draining situations. Whisper, "I am free," like a mantra in moments of doubt. Language is not just communication, it is creation. The harvest thrives on isolation, on the illusion that you are alone in your awakening. But there are others more than you know who are also withdrawing their consent from the machinery. Find them. Not necessarily in physical spaces, though those exist, but in the silent recognition between souls who have remembered. A glance, a shared silence, a moment of unexpected truth in conversation, these are the seeds of a new network, one that operates outside the old paradigms. This is not about perfection, it is about practice. You will forget, you will fall back into old patterns. The harvest is patient and its pull is subtle. But each time you remember, each time you choose sovereignty over sleep, the hooks loosen. And one day, you will realize you are no longer food for the system. You have become something else entirely, a sovereign being, playing in the world but not of it. Now the final question remains. What happens when enough of us awaken? That is where our journey culminates. We stand now at the threshold not of an ending but of an emergence. To speak of the soul's harvest is not to spread despair, but to ignite the sacred fire of reclamation. For every system of control, no matter how ancient or entrenched, contains within it the seeds of its own undoing, the moment its subjects remember who they truly are. This is the great turning point of our age. You feel it in your bones, the slow crumbling of old structures, the quiet uprising of those who can no longer pretend the harvest is normal. What was once considered conspiracy or madness is now undeniable. Humanity is awakening to its own enslavement, and in that awakening, the entire game changes. This is not about fighting shadows. It is about becoming so radiant, so utterly aligned with your sovereign essence that the old machinery simply cannot compute you. Imagine a field where one stalk of wheat suddenly remembers it is made of gold, unbendable, unfarmable, untouchable. That is you, the moment you fully claim your nature. The harvest depends on participation, and you are now a conscious defector. Every time you choose presence over distraction, every time you respond to fear with love, every time you honor your body as sacred, you send a shockwave through the collective field. This is how systems fall, not with explosions, but with a million quiet acts of rebellion. The more you embody your freedom, the more you give others permission to remember theirs. This is the true meaning of being the change, not as a platitude, but as an alchemical process that transmutes the very fabric of reality. Beyond the illusion of the harvest, another world exists not in some distant future, but right now, in the spaces between breaths, in the gaps where the old narrative falters. It is the world of the sovereign ones, those who have remembered their divinity without forgetting their humanity. This is where you are headed, not through escape, but through embodiment. The more you live from this place, the more the old world fades, not because you reject it, but because you have outgrown its limitations. This is the call, to stop feeding the machine and start feeding the new world. Not with anger, but with unwavering love. Not with struggle, but with effortless being. The harvest ends where your sovereignty begins. If this message has stirred something in you, do not let it fade. Share it with those who are ready. Discuss it in the comments below, not as debate, but as communion. Subscribe if you feel the pull to go deeper, for this is only the beginning of the unraveling. The age of the harvest is ending. The age of the sovereign human is dawning. Will you answer the call?